Welcome to the Jones Middle Summer Reading Program for Rising 8th Graders. Don't forget, rising 8th graders at Jones Middle are expected to read 2 books from the summer reading list, 1 fiction and 1 nonfiction book that have a common topic. Remember, fiction novels are fake characters in a made-up story. This would include realistic fiction, historical fiction, and suspense and thrillers. Nonfiction books are not fake. That is, they are informative books about history, science, geography, etc. Baseball has always been considered America's pastime, but recent polls show that football is currently America's favorite sport. Perhaps Americans like the exciting roughness of the tackles and the speed of the running plays. However, football can be a pressure-filled game emotionally, physically, and mentally. The author Mike Lupica knows only too well the pressures athletes face, since Lupica is a sportscaster for ESPN. In QB1, Jake Cullen, 14, lives in the shadows of his professional quarterback father and older brother who now plays college ball. While his teammates assume the starting position will be handed to Jake on a silver platter, the truth is that he has to fight for every snap and every ounce of respect. The nonfiction companion to QB1 is Fourth Down and Inches, Concussions and Football's Make or Break Moment by Carla Killow McClafferty. The book takes the reader on a journey from football's first games between Ivy League college teams to the latest research on concussion and traumatic brain injuries in the sport. There's a lot of interesting football history in this book, as well as some somber realities of the game and tragic stories of injured athletes, both amateur and professional. In 8th grade social studies, you will learn about the Civil War and the president who led the Union, Abraham Lincoln. The historical fiction novel An Acquaintance with Darkness by Anne Rinaldi is set in Washington, D.C. at the time of Lincoln's assassination. When her mother dies and her best friend's family is implicated in the assassination of President Lincoln, 14-year-old Emily must go live with an uncle she suspects of being involved in stealing bodies for medical research. The Battle of Vicksburg is considered an important turning point in the Civil War as the Northern troops divided and invaded the South. The nonfiction book Under Siege by Andrea Warren tells the story of Lucy McRae and Willie Lord, survivors of the Battle of Vicksburg in 1863, and describes how they lived in caves and underground bunkers as Union artillery bombarded the town for 6 weeks. The book also tells of young Frederick Grant, son of Ulysses S. Grant, who witnessed the carnage of that battle. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech inspired Americans to change social order and uphold civil rights, but the struggle for equality was not an easy one for both children and adults. In the historical fiction book Lions of Little Rock by Kristen Levine, the young girl Marley develops a strong friendship with Liz, the new girl in school. However, Liz suddenly stops attending school, and Marley learns that her friend is actually an African-American girl passing herself off as white. Since the schools were segregated back then, Liz is forced to return to her old school. The 2 young girls must decide whether their friendship is worth taking on integration and the dangers it could bring to their families. The events in this book are based on the actual integration of Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas. Offensive language is used briefly to achieve historical authenticity. The nonfiction companion to The Lions of Little Rock is Freedom Walkers, the story of the Montgomery bus boycott by Russell Friedman. Follow the story of Rosa Parks as she refuses to give up her seat to a white man and begins the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955. Read about Martin Luther King and other boycott heroes whose work led to a major milestone in the civil rights movement. The history of nuclear weapons began in the late 1930s as the Nazis and Hitler came to power. The race was on to develop weapons of mass destruction. In the dystopian novel The City of Ember by Jean Duprow, the city of Ember was built as a last refuge for the human race after nuclear war. People moved underground to live safely away from radiation. 200 years later, the great lamps that light the city are beginning to flicker. Their generator is failing, and they are running out of food. When Lena finds part of an ancient message, she's sure it holds a secret that will save the city. She and her friend Dune must decipher the message before the lights go out on Ember forever. The Bomb, The Race to Build and Steal the World's Most Dangerous Weapon by Steve Sheinkin, tells the history of the development of the atomic bomb. In December of 1938, a chemist in a German laboratory made a shocking discovery. When placed next to a radioactive material, a uranium atom split in two. That simple discovery launched a scientific race that spanned 3 continents. In Great Britain and the United States, Soviet spies worked their way into the scientific community. In Norway, a commando force slipped behind enemy lines to attack German heavy water manufacturing. And deep in the desert, one brilliant group of scientists was hidden away at a remote site at Los Alamos. This is the story of the plotting, the risk-taking, the deceit, and genius that created the world's most formidable weapon. While we Americans live a pretty comfortable life here in the 21st century, could we still be in danger from major epidemics? Code Orange by Carolyn B. Cooney is a suspense thriller about the dangers of bioterrorism. While conducting research for a school paper on smallpox, Mitty finds an envelope carrying 100-year-old smallpox scabs and fears that he has infected himself and all of New York City. Then he must deal with the terrorists who want his smallpox samples. Do you enjoy shows about forensic medicine such as House and Bones? Then you will enjoy Secret of the Yellow Death, the true story of medical sleuthing by Suzanne Germain. This book describes the true story of how doctors and researchers, led by Dr. Walter Reed, tracked down the cause of yellow fever, a disease that threatened to turn into an epidemic during the early 1900s. As we learn about the Holocaust, we learn about the horrible, tragic acts of violence against humanity committed by the Nazis. And yet there are also inspiring stories of courage and selflessness. Learning about the Holocaust is important to ensure that we do not let history repeat itself. In the book Prisoner B 3087 by Alan Gratz, you will follow Jack Gruner as he is forced to live in the Krakow ghetto of Poland and then is eventually shipped off to what would be a total of 10 concentration camps. He is separated from his family and learns to live one day at a time as Prisoner B 3087, the number assigned to him by the Nazis and tattooed on his arm. Courage and Defiance, Stories of Spies, Saboteurs, and Survivors in World War II Denmark by Deborah Hopkinson is an amazing book with primary photos that tell the story of the heroic Danish young men and women who refused to stand by as their country was occupied by the Nazis. Some were spies, some were saboteurs, and 95% of the Jewish population of Denmark were survivors, rescued by their fellow countrymen who had the courage and conscience that drove them to act. Space, the Final Frontier. Is there really life in other parts of the solar system or the universe? That is the question that has driven men and women to venture into the unknown. Travel into the future with the exciting dystopian book Cinder by Marissa Mayer. Cinder, a gifted mechanic and a cyborg with a mysterious past, is blamed by her stepmother for her stepsister's illness, while a deadly plague decimates the population of New Beijing. When Cinder's life gets intertwined with Prince Kai's, she finds herself at the center of an intergalactic struggle as they battle the Lunar Queen who wants to take over the Earth. This book is like Divergent meeting Star Wars, futuristic and exciting. Almost Astronauts, 13 Women Who Dared to Dream by Tanya Lee Jones is about the forgotten pioneers of the space race, women. What does it take to be an astronaut? Excellence at flying, courage, intelligence, resistance to stress, top physical shape? Any checklist would include these. But when America created NASA in 1958, there was another unspoken rule. You had to be a man. Here is the tale of 13 women who proved that they were not only as tough as the toughest man, but also brave enough to challenge the government. They were blocked by prejudice, jealousy, and the scrawled note of one of the most powerful men in Washington. But even though the Mercury 13 women did not make it into space, they did not lose, for their example empowered young women to take their place in the sky, piloting jets and commanding space capsules. World War II documentaries are filled with amazing stories about amazing heroes. Learn about some unusual heroes in the historical fiction book Code Talker, a novel about the Navajo Marines of World War II by Joseph Bruchac. After being taught in a boarding school run by whites that Navajo is a useless language, Ned Begay and other Navajo men are recruited by the Marines to become code talkers, sending messages during World War II in their native tongue. D-Day, The Invasion of Normandy, 1944, Young Readers Edition by Rick Atkinson, takes the reader to the European battlefront when Allied forces landed on the beaches of France to begin the push to invade Germany, codename Operation Overlord. You will learn about the invasion through the letter entries and photos of soldiers and their commanders. You will learn about the technology developed to fight the Nazis. You will also learn about the cunning strategy to defeat the Nazis and much more. The first step in the summer reading program is to be sure to fill out your reading contract and return it to your homeroom teacher. All the books on the 8th grade summer reading list are available at the public library or at local retail booksellers such as Barnes & Noble and Books for Less. You can also purchase these titles on the internet using online book retailers such as Amazon.com, Walmart.com, and BarnesandNoble.com. Remember, rising 8th graders at Jones are expected to read 2 books, 1 fiction and 1 nonfiction on a common topic. You will have a written assignment which will be completed and turned into your language arts teacher in August for a grade. The directions for the written assignment will be in your end of the year report card envelope, and you can also get to the directions online through the Jones website under the Students tab, Media Center, and Summer Reading. Summertime is a great time to read and relax and enjoy a good book. After all, reading is something you can do anywhere at any time. Have a great summer, and we'll see you at Jones Middle in August.